Women Photographers International Archive, or WOPHA, was co-founded by art historian Aldeide Delgado and visual artist Francisco Maso to research, promote, support, and educate on the contributions of women and non-binary photographers to modern and contemporary art. WOPHA celebrates and expands the visibility of women photographers, both here in Miami and around the world. I am honored to have been invited to host this inaugural film series as part of Give Miami Day, our city's largest annual online giving event. As an artist, communicator, and advocate for creative visibility in Miami's cultural landscape, supporting WOPHA feels deeply personal. This organization represents the power of community, the importance of visibility, and the transformative potential of photography. Today's conversations are more than interviews. They are actually encounters. Each dialogue opens a window into the passion, resilience, and vision that drive the women and allies who are helping us make Miami a meeting place for the international photography community. Join us as we listen, reflect, and celebrate their stories, told in their own voices. I am your host, Leslie Gabaldón. And finally, I'm thrilled to be speaking with Aldeide Delgado, Cuban-born, Miami-based art historian, curator, and founder of the Women Photographers International Archive, better known as WOPHA. What began as her research project, the Catalog of Cuban Women Photographers, has grown into an international organization researching, connecting, and celebrating women and non-binary photographers as well. Together with her husband and creative collaborator, artist Francisco Maso, Aldeide has built WOPHA into a global community that bridges scholarship, feminism, and art making, positioning Miami as the key center for this global dialogue. Her research and curatorial practice have been presented at institutions such as Tate Modern, Palais de Tokyo, Perez Art Museum Miami, the Clark Institute, and the University of Miami, amplifying the visibility of artists who have long been left out of the mainstream narrative. Aldeide, welcome. I am so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Leslie.
Well, let's dive in. Let's begin from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Now, let's start from the beginning. What first made you aware of the absence of women in the history of Cuban photography? And how did that realization led or made the path to what has become today WOPHA?
Well, thank you so much for the question, and also, of course, for taking this task of interviewing and connecting with all these people during this entire day. Really have been very special.
Pleasure.
I have to say that WOPHA, at the beginnings, the origins of WOPHA are, as you mentioned, in the Catalog of Cuban Women Photographers, a project that initiated in 2013. At that moment, we are speaking, I was in my 20 years, something, 20.
Fresh out of college?
No, still in school.
Oh, you were still in college?
I was studying art history at the University of Havana. And I noticed that there were no photography. Photography wasn't included in the curriculum of the career of art history. And of course, at that moment, living in Cuba, in a country where we are surrounded by political images, propagandistic images, for me was very important, or I was trying to understand what was the role of photography in that kind of political or national narrative, and what was the place of women in that context. And I remember, at that moment, as I said, I was very young, and in one of my classes, I asked a professor that where were the women photographers in Cuban history, and they told me, oh, there are no Cuban women photographers, and if they are,
Meaning that they didn't exist, or meaning that they didn't
well,
know?
they said there are no women photographers, and if they exist, they are not good. So,
Okay.
so that was no, literally, and imagine how upset I got when I listened to that. And I said, well, this can be, and I am going to prove you that you are wrong. I remember telling that to the professor. And I started to do a little bit of research, and then I found that there were no previous investigation on women photographers, particularly before the 90s. I mean, from before the 1990s. That is the moment when it's recognized in the Cuban context, the emergence of a new generation of women artists. So I decided to go back to the 19th century, starting with when it was recognized, the first women photographer in 1853, the photographer Encarnación Erostegui, and taking that as a point of departure, started to uncover or starting to, reveal who were those women that contributed to the history of
Aldeide,
photography.
where did you find this information?
Well, it was very hard. I started to go to the National Library and reviewing the newspapers, because one of the questions that you need to ask if you are a researcher, if you are a scholar, is where I am going to find this information. And you need to understand that photography wasn't always considered an art form. Even still, we are struggling with all
Sometimes.
kind, of complexities. And I question or I wonder, how was photography circulating in the 19th century, in the early years of the 20th century? And one of the main mediums was the newspaper. So I started to research Diario de la Marina, magazines such as Social, and trying to reviewing page by page, finding in the credits to identify the name of a women photographer.
Wow.
And in that process, starting to even speculate, imagining what could have been the life of that woman. One of the phrases, or let's say like quotes, that stuck with me was this idea of Virginia Woolf when she said Anonymous was a woman. And I remember that one of the main books for studying Cuban photography, that book has like 87 photographs identified as anonymous. And for me, I was wondering, like, what happened if those were women and they even have been, they haven't been recognized. So it's a kind of detective work. Going back, I was loving that experience, just spending days in libraries and in archives, and identifying, reviewing all this older material, and trying to identify those names.
Wow, that's really incredible. How long did it take you? Like,
Well,
you're still working on it, right?
Exactly, I am still working on that. I remember that first of all, I established different categories, historical periods, of course, going from the 1853 to 1952 to 1902. That is the moment when is recognized that it starts the Republican period in Cuba. Then from 1902 to 1962, and then from there to the early 2000s, and then like contemporary. But you need to establish some kind of methodology to be able to trace and to build a narrative, to build a discourse.
So again, we find here during these conversations and interviews another woman who was determined to create something that didn't exist, which leads me to ask you, what surprised you the most during that research?
Well, one of the elements that I am most proud and that surprised me was finding the female division of the Cuban Photography Club. The Cuban Photography Club is the most important institution dedicated to the cultivation of photography as arts as an artistic practice during the Republican years that I mentioned, go from 1902 to 1959. And this institution was active from 1935 to 1962. And I remember that as I was, there were some research about this institution. None of the publications about that never mentioned a women photographer. And I was reviewing in the catalogs and I said, how is that possible? I mean, that is not possible that there are no women
Yeah,
here.
you were.
So I started,
Decide, yeah.
exactly. So again, reviewing the catalogs, reviewing the bulletin of the institution, one day I found in a catalog from 1947 in the cover of the bulletin the image of a women photographer.
Oh, wow.
And that was Shea Quintana. And I was so excited, so happy. I said, here it is. And that was like, a door that opened, because after that, I knew that that existed a female division that was created.
The name.
Yeah, exactly. And that was created by the wives and the sisters of the members of the club that were men. And of course, the women were there. They were in charge mainly of doing the fundraising activities, of organizing parties, excursions, of doing as well the film projections in the evening. They have this kind of activities and practice photography. It's very important because for these women, we have to consider that women were not allowed to have a job and to receive the earnings of the job until 1940s. So we are speaking that this is a moment of a lot of transformation that was happening in Cuba in the moment. A lot of feminist influence provoked as well for the relationship with the U.S. And this, and for these women practicing photography and getting together was a way of being modern. It was a way of a sign of progress, a way of entering into modernity. So it's very interesting.
That's very interesting.
Yes.
Because we have not touched that point throughout all of the conversations. How does photography makes you feel when you are behind the lens? And then earlier, Nicole Kembo was talking about it was the only way that he felt control. And then we have Maggie Stever saying that photography was a way of connecting with humanity and the world around it. And so we have had different people today that have say what photography makes them feel. So what you're just saying right now, it's super important. And what led me to let's finish answering the question. How did all that led to what WOPHA is today?
Well, the thing is that this is the historical part. But then there was another part where I was doing a studio visits and meeting with these artists. And the catalog of Cuban women photographers started as that, a catalog.
Okay.
I thought that it was going to be, a list, an identification of all these artists. But as I was meeting with them, a sense of urgency started to emerge, because it was so needed to provide a platform, a long-term. I mean, I knew that couldn't be just a matter of doing a publication and closing the project just like that. It was needed to create a structure. It was needed to create a platform that would provide exhibition opportunities, publication opportunities, commercialization opportunities. All of that these artists didn't have. As they were mostly in silence. And then that we are speaking around 2016. At that moment, I moved to Miami.
Like 9 years ago.
Yes, exactly. So I moved to Miami, and it was incredible because then I had access to the internet. I had access to a lot of artists that until that moment...
world opened.
Exactly. Before that, the research was mainly focused on the Cuban artists that were living in Cuba. By coming here, I started to meet with artists such as Silvia Lizama, artists such as Maria Martinez Cañas, getting to know all those Cuban women artists that were living in the diaspora, that were living in exile. And also I started to embrace or trying to understand what does it mean to be in Miami. I met artists like Maggie Stever, and I noticed that those elements, that lack of representation, that lack of spaces, that identifying the Cuban context wasn't specific to the context in the island, but it was needed to create a platform here as well.
Did you know about this Cuban women in the diaspora before you moved to Miami? Did you know about them, or you found out about them?
No, I found out about them living here.
That must have been an incredible, beautiful experience for you. Because getting in contact with, you were building a catalog of Cuban women photographer, and then moving to Miami and finding out that they were live and active Cuban photographers living here.
Of course.
That must have been exciting, right?
That's very important because what happened in the Cuban context is that most of the time when you leave, you are forgotten. And people even start speaking about you like you have passed away or you no longer exist.
You're dead.
Exactly. So really, it was like a great experience, transformative experience to be able, a moment of inspiration to be able to meet these artists, to know all that they were doing in our community. And that, gave me strength for building WOPHA.
That's beautiful. So that leads me to this question that you often describe WOPHA as a meeting place for international photography community. So why does Miami feel like the right home for this? Because you could have gone to New York, you could have gone to LA. Why do you think Miami is the home for you, your family, your husband, and also for WOPHA?
Yes, I was mentioning that there was a process of adaptation that took me approximately 2 years, trying to understand the characteristic of the city, to understand what does it mean to be a Miamian. And one of the main influences for me, it's very intentional when I said that there is a meeting place for photography, because I came with this idea of creating an archive. WOPHA is an archive, but you can ask me what kind of archive is WOPHA? And it's an archive from a relational perspective. It's an archive. Yeah, it's a place, it's a living place where it's a place for community. So and that idea comes really from the understanding of archives, of places, not as frozen in time, but as something that is in constant evolution. And that comes, that is a theoretical reference from an author, Doreen Masin, when she speaks about the importance of places, of global places. But another important reference for me has been Gloria Anzaldúa, who was a feminist, Chicana scholar. And she speaks about the mestiza consciousness, that kind of consciousness that emerges when you are in a border space. And that brings me to Miami, because even when Gloria Anzaldúa is speaking about the context of the border between Mexico and the US, I consider Miami a border space.
Absolutely.
Miami as an international place, a political place, a highly political place. This is a city feel of people that has come from many places and that feel like an exceptional place in the context of the US. And, WOPHA takes all of that to position itself as an organization that is rewriting the history of photography from feminist and decolonial perspectives. So it's taking that notion of the border and intersecting photography history from a border perspective, from a decolonial perspective, from an archipelagic perspective. So, basically, that's why Miami
happens to be the perfect place.
The perfect place.
By the way, if you are just joining us, we are talking about WOPHA, Women International Archive, and we are in the company of Aldeide Delgado today, which is Give Miami Day. I would like to remind you that your donations are tax deductible and your support is super important for the organization. So let's continue with our conversation. One of the most exciting questions that I have for you is that you recently announced a new chapter for WOPHA. So can you tell me a little bit about what is coming up in the next year, and talk to us a little bit about the programs that WOPHA organizes?
Yes, well, we have too many programs. I have to say that in these 7 years that the organization have been active, we have grown a lot, and we have wonderful partners in our community. I am very proud of our educational activities. We, thanks to our partnerships with, for example, Miami Design District, we host workshops, photo works around the neighborhood. We also have done these workshops in Alapata, in Little Havana, in the Everglades. So we really love these opportunities because they provide access to our neighborhoods, to different people. They are very popular. We also organize portfolio reviews. It's a wonderful opportunity for students to get mentorship opportunities and being able to present the work to the main curators in our community, or curators working in the prominent museums in our city or in South Florida
Not
in
only
general.
students,
No, well, exactly.
photographers in general, right?
Exactly, photography in general. It's really a practice of community. And I think that we have like a very close community that support each other, and it's
Yes,
so
we do.
beautiful to have those kind of critical spaces. Speaking of that, we also have a new program that the name is Image Readings. It's taking place every one Friday every month, and it's a program as well, an intimate space for presenting your work and receive feedback. Beyond that, we organize exhibitions, at least 2 exhibitions in a year. We have an artist in residence program that have been running successfully during the past 5 years.
Tell me a little bit about that artist in residence program.
Yes, well, the Artist in Residence program, we bring artists to Miami, international artists, to come to our city and to interact with the local artistic community for 1 month. And now I have something very special to announce, because starting next year, we are going to start bringing Miami artists, to international festivals to provide them that level of exposure and connectivity in this big moment.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, another of the really important programs that the organization has and that is so dear to me is the Research Fellowship, because, of course, we are all the time supporting women artists, but I'm a curator and a historian, and I was wondering what I could do for the people like me. There is a reality that right now our criticism is kind of in a moment of crisis, and we want to support those writers, those scholars, those people who are writing the stories of these women artists, which is very important. So the Research Fellowship Program supports the publication of the work, supports the practice of writing on photography. And of course, I would have to mention the WOPHA Congress, which is our most ambitious program that takes place every 3 years in partnership with many institutions around South Florida. The main one is the Perez Art Museum, Miami, our home as well in the city. And it's a very important convening, creative convening, when we bring together prominent women photographers, art historians, and scholars from around the world here to Miami.
Wonderful. How many congresses have you organized so far?
2 already, and we have had like wonderful, great levels of attendance, with the last one going over 2,000 people who have engaged and participated in the different activities, including we partner with the Miami Dade Public Library, organizing exhibition in those spaces. It is very important for WOPHA to bring this kind of discussions outside of the academy, outside of the universities, outside of the museum spaces. We want to touch people, because that's what I love about photography. Photography is a practice with what we interact in our daily life. We are all photographers, and I think that we all need to be educated about how to read images, particularly in the moment that we are living right now. We need to understand about the importance of images, how they transmit, how they can impact politically, how powerful they are. And we are the space for that in Miami.
Now that you mentioned that we're going through a very important, difficult moment in the history of the United States, I think this is a perfect moment, because we're running out of time. For the person who's listening to you right now, the person who just tuned in or have been listening to you, if you could say one message to that person, what would that be?
When I invite people in our community to join us in our vision to make Miami a meeting place for photography. We need you. This is a place of community. It is a family. That's how I speak about WOPHA. And I really invite everyone out there to join us in making history. And so please consider donating us today. No matter the size of the donation, it could be $25, that's the minimum. It could be $50, it could be whatever you can to do, but it will really help us in making history, in putting Miami in a global place, because
And
I
the
think
education part.
yeah, no, of course. And something that I didn't mention is that, how there are two things that I want to highlight. First of all, we are an organization that supports women, but I want to bring again that this is an organization co-founded as well by my partner, by me and my partner, Francisco Maso. We believe that feminism is for everybody. This is an organization where we welcome men in our community as well. We have strong allies who have supported the organization. We really want everyone to feel that WOPHA is their space, is their photography space. And of course, we want them to be part of that. And the second important idea is that when I have visited, this very global important cities such as Paris or New York, and you see that they have these extraordinary photography museums. I want something like that for Miami as well. So by supporting us, you are helping us making that dream a reality.
Very soon, hopefully. Thank you, Aldeide. Thank you so much, first of all, for creating WOPHA. And thank you so much for giving us all the opportunity to become a beautiful community, to making Miami an international meeting place for photographers community, and also for providing our audience with the opportunity to be in touch with the wonderful people that you were able to bring today for these conversations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.